Hi guys, thank you for joining. This is the Oracle Machine Learning Office Hours. I'm Marcos Aracibia, and today we're going to have a very interesting session because we have Sherry LaMonica that will be doing an update for us on what's new in Oracle Machine Learning. And I will be, if time allows, at the end, I'm going to be doing a quick demo on some of the things. But without further ado, so thank you very much, Sherry, for joining us this morning, and take it away.
Okay, let's get started. Here's a list of the updates we'll review today. We have some updates to the OML notebooks, an update to the structure of our REST URLs, and for OML services, we're introducing clustering for ONNX models, support for Italian language with cognitive text, and new filters for the model type and shared attributes, and a new ESA Wiki model built under database 19c. Let's get started with OML notebooks. The OML notebooks are Zeppelin-based, and we recently upgraded from Zeppelin 082 to Zeppelin 09. And with this upgrade, users can now import Jupyter notebooks, while previously one could only import Zeppelin notebooks. We also introduced 15 new notebooks in the OML template examples. And these are pre-populated notebooks that can be used as a guide for specific features and algorithms. And with the new notebooks, we now have 79 template examples where 40 are OML for Pi notebooks, 39 are OML for SQL focused, and 4 of the new notebooks apply to database 21c only because they use XGBoost and MSET, which are introduced in database 21c. We also have one notebook that shows how to load data from GitHub into an OML notebook, and it's titled OML Run Me First because a lot of the template examples use the data that's imported in this example. And you can view and also edit these templates to create your own notebooks. We also updated many of the existing notebooks by adding examples with additional settings for the in-database algorithms and for the OML for Pi notebooks. Examples were added that used OML for SQL to score and display prediction details.
Right, and I wanted to add just one comment, Sherry, that, you know, this is for you guys, right? So because you guys are users, for us, it's awesome to receive feedback, right? So if you guys have feedback for us, if you guys have even other ideas, right, on things that you think should be a template, you know, just let us know as well. So all feedback is welcome.
Yes, and that includes feedback on any office hours topics that you'd like to see in the future. Please put those in the Q&A or any questions that you have along the way. Okay, now let's look at the updates to the OML REST URLs. So Oracle Machine Learning provides REST APIs for OML for Pi and OML Services as a REST API. The OML for Pi REST API for embedded Python execution has endpoints to run a user-defined Python functions in Python, but managed by the database environment. And OML Services supports model management and deployment in Autonomous Database. So for both OML for Pi and OML Services REST APIs, the base URL now includes the tenancy ID and database name. And this works for OML Notebooks too, the OML Notebooks URL. Previously, the base URL contained the data center region and root domain. In this case, the region is San Jose and the domain is oraclecloud.com. And now it's going to contain the tenancy ID, which is this thing right here, the database name, OMLDB, the region, and the root domain, which is now oraclecloudapps.com. And the authentication token, which we'll look at next, was requiring the tenancy OSID and database name, but this is no longer needed.
And I think it's good to mention, Sherry, also that this is working right now, right? So it's available today like this, but the old way or the current way is also available, right? So these things are going to be running in parallel, right, for a while until you guys get used to the new version and you're only using new versions, and the new link, it shows up in all the new links that we provide, right, in the OCI console, things like that.
Exactly. When I say old style, it is still working today, right. and will for a period of time. And then essentially the net result is that this is going to simplify all of the REST calls that are sent by the user. And we'll show you how. The second change here, I already mentioned, is that the root domain for OML and other autonomous database applications like Apex and SQL Developer Web have migrated from oraclecloud.com to oraclecloudapps.com. Okay, so to use the OML for Pi and OML Services REST APIs, you first need to get a token, and then you use that token for all of your requests. And this is the API to get the token request and authenticate OML users for the REST APIs. The token endpoint is that OAuth2 v1 token. And with the old style URLs, in addition to the OML server URL, users also had to pass the tenancy OSID and database name to get the token. Now, only the OML server URL is needed, and users don't need to pass values to identify the tenancy and database for the token request. So where can I find the URLs that correspond to my tenancy? So the updated REST URLs for your specific tenancy will be available in the development area of your Autonomous Database Service Console. So from the Service Console, you'll select Development, and then you'll go down to Oracle Machine Learning RESTful Services. And this is the same area where you'll access OML Notebooks, like Oracle Database Actions, and the URLs for Oracle REST Data Services, or ORDS. And you can copy the URLs from here. Now, the screenshot you see here is what this will look like in the coming weeks. It's not available from the interface today, but you can easily copy the first portion of the ORDS URL as it uses the same URL structure. And as you can see here, the URL has ORDS at the end. The only difference is that the OML URLs will have OML or OML mod there. So there's the ORDS. This is what you'll see today. And then in the coming weeks, you'll see this. So to get a token, you need a valid Oracle Machine Learning username and password from your OML administrator, and you need the OML developer role. And once you have that, you can get your token. So this is the curl command to get the token. Your OML server URL contains the tenancy ID, database, and region now, and you'll pass just your username and password to the OML user's token endpoint. And then you'll use this token to send your request to the OML endpoints. This is an example of an OML Services REST API request, and it's retrieving the open API description, or the Swagger file, for the current version 1. The return value describes the entire API, including all the available endpoints and the operations that are available for each endpoint, like get and post. And here we're passing the OML Services URL, which is the OML server base URL with OML mod for OML Services, along with the token to the version 1 API. This is the equivalent request to get the open API description for OML for Pi. And again, we're passing the OML for Pi URL, which is the OML server base URL with OML for OML for Pi. And we're including the token to get the API description for version 1. And you can see here, this is the token. This is a shortened version of the token. It's much longer than that, but you always want to pass it after bearer. And as we mentioned earlier, the link where you will access the OML notebooks has changed with the new URL structure. And originally, it started with this login URL and included the tenancy OSID, database, and this long redirect URI. The new style is significantly shorter, but it still has the identifying information like the tenancy ID, the database, and the region. Okay, now let's look at the recent updates to OML services. So with OML services, you can deploy and score third-party ONNX format models. And initially, we were supporting regression and classification models, and now we're introducing support for clustering models. And the example that we have here over the next few slides uses scikit-learn's k-means clustering function, and it creates a k-means model in 2 dimensions and then predicts cluster membership. And in these screenshots, we're importing our required Python packages to build the model, and then we're visualizing the original data. And next, we're creating the clustering model with the 2 input attributes and display the predictions. We show the cluster centroids as a little sanity check. And then here's actually where we're exporting the model to ONNX format and create this zip file that OML Services requires. And the zip file includes the saved ONNX model and a metadata.json file that describes the outputs that we need. And here it's the cluster distance scores. And once you have this zip file, you can store the model in the OML Services repository and deploy and score the model using the OML Services REST endpoints. And in the lower right here, it shows that we did the scoring using a curl command along with the output. Marcos will show this with Postman coming up here soon. And we'll post this entire example along with the slides after this session for anyone who wants to take a look at the code. OML Services cognitive text functionality now supports the Italian language. And this capability includes topic discovery, keyword summary, and similarity. There's also support for English, Spanish, French with sentiment available for English. And the cognitive text workflow is very simple. You just get your token and then submit your textual data for analysis. And this example is for topic discovery using the Oracle Machine Learning mission statement in Italian. And the most relevant topics and their weights are returned. There's a blog here. You can check out the blog for the full example. We also have 2 new filtering types for OML services, and these are for the user when they want to look up or search the models that are available to them. And one of the new filters is for the model type. The other is for the shared attribute, and shared indicates if the model is shared with other OML users in the tenancy or if it's private to the user that created it. And the model type can be OML, ONNX, or ONNX image, and shared is a logical value, either true for shared or false for private or not shared. And you can also filter by the model name, model version, and namespace. The last update I'll talk about is the new Wiki ESA model, and then Marcos will run through a quick demo of some of the features we've discussed. So we have a new Wiki ESA model built under database 19C, and this is a pre-built model. It's used for feature extraction for explicit features in a knowledge base. And this new model was built using millions of articles available from Wikipedia as of July 1st, 2021. And we use Wikipedia because it's a large, comprehensive knowledge base, but users can also create their own custom ESA models. You can check out this blog for more details. So if anyone is interested in creating their own custom ESA model instead of the one we've created with Wikipedia, these are the steps that were followed to process the Wikipedia data. So they took these Wikipedia dump files, which are XML files with tags, and they did some filtering to distill the contents down to general knowledge on a variety of topics, removing HTML tags and special characters from the content. And then Oracle Labs Doc Store removes the unusable information and creates categories on the remaining articles. And then the model is reduced to retain more general information and concepts, filtering out things like references, sources, and further reading. And in the case of the current Wikipedia model, the topics were reduced to about 161,000.
Yeah, and I think that's just an illustration of how complex it can be as well, right, Sherry? So
Right.
it's not for the faint of heart for sure, but the idea is that this is a work that we did so that you guys can just take advantage of it, right? And I think that that's important. And also that it's important that the model is compatible with both any of the cloud databases and also on premises. So if you have a database on premises and you want to use the Oracle Machine Learning ESA Wiki model, you're welcome to. And then we have examples of using that in the autonomous database, actually, right, with the notebook. But again, the code is the same, so you can run it directly on the on premises as well.
Right. And here's where you can download the wiki model. So this is Oracle's open source software site, and this link for machine learning. And the blog link describes how to install the model. But we also have 2 demos for you to follow in the OML Notebook template examples. And you can find them in the template examples by searching just for ESA. Okay, I think that's all I have for today. And Marcos is going to run through a few quick demos, and then we'll open the floor for Q&A.
Hey guys, so just to show you guys real quick, right? This is an example of that URL that Sherry was talking about. So if you take this URL and then we just hit enter, you're gonna notice that it actually redirects right to all of these other information. It does that information, the old tenancy, OSID, and all the anything that is needed, right? But I only needed to point to that shorter URL, and I'm here in my notebooks, right? Now, this is the database user credentials, right? So if you want to get to the admin credentials, so where the administrator is going to be able to create, delete, and change the OML users settings, then the cool thing is it's very easy. So you'd only do OML users here and enter. And it's the same thing again. It's going to point you directly into the database administrator credentials for OML, for your tenancy, and then for your database. Okay. So again, very simple. It's very useful, right, to have a shorter bookmark, and then again compatible and working in conjunction with all the other links that are available, including all of the access to autonomous database tools and other things like that, right? ORDs. So now everything is going to go through that same structure, right? So with that said, what Sherry was talking about as well was the right here, right? So in Postman, using the REST APIs, right? So for REST APIs, I'm going to get my token, and you're going to see that this is different, right? So now again, as Sherry was showing, we no longer need the tenancy OSID, and then we don't no longer need a database name, right? This URL is the new one, so I show you here. This is my current value. I have nothing in tenant. I have nothing in database because I don't need that, right? So I have my user and password, but I only have this new URL style, and I do send, and then I do get my token back, and now I can use it to for example, list all models. Now I'm going to list all ONNX classical models, but I'm also using the new filter. So there's a new filter for modelType, right? So as a parameter, modelType equals ONNX. If I do that, then I then receive back a list of models that are of the type ONNX. Okay. So, and that's useful again because you want to try to isolate ONNX from OML models, right? So you're trying to visualize these different things, so you can see that I have all of my models right here, right? And to do that, also I have a few other models that I have created. So the last one that I wanted to, the last one on this section that I wanted to show you guys was the scikit-learn k-means, right? So as Sherry was showing, one of the new things we have is the support for clustering. So we have this k-means model here deployed. And then just as my classification models that I had before, I can just come here and send that. And this one is very, very simple example with only two columns that I'm playing with, right? That we were showing you guys. But again, it's just to show you the results. So if you send that, you're gonna get back exactly this, right? So now scoring results is clusters. And in this case, because of the k-means in scikit-learn, right, you get only the distance back. So that's what it's showing you, right? So because I had two clusters, so for cluster 0, this is the distance, and to cluster 1, this is the distance. So I'm definitely gonna assign that guy cluster number 1, right? And you can visualize them a little better as well, something like that, right? And if you have more than one record, same thing applies again, right? So you have multiple records to score, something like that. You can then send that and get back the results. So you have now the first guy, which is has a distance of 8, again, to cluster 0, right? And then the second record has actually a distance of 1.8 to cluster 0 and 5.9 to cluster 1, right? So if you visualize them like that, it's probably easier to see. And then, so you see that you would have assigned the first customer, right, to cluster 1, right? Shorter distance here. But then customer number 1 would be assigned cluster 0, right? So that is on clustering. So again, we support any of these clustering methods. So we're going to be building other examples as well for you guys, but the one that we showed you, we can make sure that you guys have access to that, maybe a Jupyter notebook with that code. So something that you guys can play with, right? And then on the embedded Python, so the same thing, right? So on the embedded Python side, if I wanted to just list my available OML for Pi REST scripts, right? Now with the new URL, right? I only need to pass this guy here, right? And then with the new URL, I do /OML, just like what Sherry was showing and talking about, right? Then we can do /API and then PyScripts and V1 scripts. So that way, what comes back is the list of my Oracle Machine Learning for Python scripts that are registered with the database, right? So because I have a few, then it's taking a little more time, but I got a few scripts. So it comes back with the entire script to show you all of that, right? So if I visualize it, it's a little easier to see, right? So I have several of these different functions defined, and I see all of the different, all of my different tests and things like that, right? So that's basically it that we wanted to show you guys. So again, these new URLs are today available. As Sherry was mentioning, if you copy it from your autonomous database tools, it's going to be the same, right? So it's going to be the same portion here, right? Minus that /ords, right? But it's going to be the same, root URL here, right? And then that's it. So it makes it easier, right? I would say for you guys to do all of these different components and different access to these different pieces of OML, right? So that's going to be, again, as Sherry mentioned, implemented going forward. It's working today, but we are working on the documentation of it. And as soon as we push that to production, you're going to see that in the console there in the autonomous database, in the service console. So I think that's it. So Sherry, back to you to the QA slide, I think, right?
That's right. Thank you, Marcos. Okay, so let's open the floor for Q&A. Does anybody have any questions or comments or suggestions for future office hours ideas?
Okay, there's a question. Any timelines when this will be available? Yeah, I mean, it is. So we're testing it. It is right now in testing in pre-production. So we assume it's going to be out, like Sherry mentioned, right? Maybe in a few weeks. So we expect that to be available very soon. So, but again, even if you if you use your older URLs, everything is going to work. And the rest of the functions that Shari talked about, including importing Jupyter, right, the notebooks, and then the cognitive text in Italian, and all the other things are already production, right?
So, and the new template notebooks as well. Those are
right.
available today.
Exactly, the template notebooks and all of those. So if you have today, if you have an autonomous database, always free, you can choose the release, right? When you start it up, so you can choose a 21C release, and then in that OML, you're going to see the XGBoost and the MSET examples, right? That's probably the only thing that you might not see it in the 19C side. So there's a question: where can I find missed sessions recorded videos? Yeah, that's a great question, Prakash. So if you go back to the same link we sent you, so the same link you used to come here on the Ask Tom sessions, you will actually be able to see all of the previous sessions and all of the recordings that we have ever done, including, starting from the Machine Learning 101, going to all of the presentations and even the hands-on labs, right? So you can easily see that. So I think that's a good idea. If you go back to that same link again, right, for the Ask Tom for Oracle Machine Learning, then you're going to be able to see all of the sessions there. And then Derek mentioned about supporting Python and SQL makes sense, but OML is database-centric solution, and SQL is the language of the database, and we should take a SQL-first approach to development. Yeah, and we have, Derek. So we have a focus on Python right now for OML for Pi, right, users, especially for the machine learning users, right? But everything behind the scenes is definitely SQL. So, and to your point, right, to the SQL first approach, the XGBoost and the MSET algorithms on 21C are only available in SQL, right? So Python is coming later. So right now we only have those examples using SQL even, right? So definitely we have not forgotten our roots, but yeah, thanks for the opinion. I think that's something that we can definitely bring back, and I think it's a good feedback, right, Sherry, as well for us going forward, because for the Oracle Machine Learning Office Hours, right, we should actually try to add more SQL and then switch, back and forth between Python and SQL. I think it makes a lot of sense. And then coming next year, R as well, right? So that's going to be fun to play with R and SQL and Python as well. All right. Any more questions, suggestions? Excellent.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys. As always, the recordings are going to be available with the same link you guys used to get here today. So just look for it. Give us a few days, and then we're going to get it there. And also last week's recording is also going to be made available as well. All right?
All right. Okay. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day and stay safe.